Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Olds, and today I'm going to be interviewing my good friend Nathan Rutherford about his first year as a physics PhD student at the University of New Hampshire. Nathan and I went to the same college, and we both graduated in 2019 with degrees in math and physics. He is currently finishing his first year at a PhD program, whereas I dropped out after one semester. This will be entirely audio, so feel free to listen to this like a podcast. Hopefully, the two of us together can give you some insight and lukewarm takes on what it's like being a physics graduate student. So, thank you for listening, and let's see what Nathan has to say. Okay, so Nathan, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and why you chose the program that you chose for graduate school?
Okay, so hi everybody. My name's Nathan Rutherford. No, I have no relation to the Nobel laureate. Just to put that out there. As sad as that is. I wish it was true, but it's not. Yeah, so I'm from middle of nowhere, New York. Went to undergrad 20 minutes from where I was born,
At the best school.
and at the best school, I'll admit. Yeah, and then um, I just like hanging out with friends, doing whatever, studying physics in particular, learning things, fiddling with my computer. And yeah, so why I chose to go to physics graduate school in New Hampshire was one, they had they've had a tradition of a theory department a little bit. It's not notable like schools like Harvard or MIT and whatnot, but we have connections to those sorts of schools, and there were a couple theorists there that I admired what they did and what they stood up for. In particular, with my advisor being a social justice advocate, I thought that was really cool.
That's so cool.
And also, the girlfriend was here, so it made it a lot easier to decide in some sense, because I really do like this area, and it also gives me room to drive home if I want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned bigger schools. Do you feel like you regret not going to a bigger school with a more prominent physics program that's well known, or do you like where you are now, or wish you got into something smaller? Like, how does it feel at UNH?
I like it a lot. I think it is not too big where I feel like there is no connection from where I had gone as an undergrad, which I actually really appreciate going to a smaller school because you can build those relationships with your professors and they can write you stronger letters of recommendation. And I think, the professors at small liberal arts schools, can explain it just as well as somebody who went to a large school such as, Notre Dame or whatever you want to pick. Um, and so we have that community behind us, and the professors are a little more apt to care about you more and your well being and your career at those stages. And UNH, I think, is a nice middle ground where, yeah, they're a bigger university, but like I still get that sense of community in some sense there. So, yeah, I don't regret going to a smaller school. And UNH is bigger, but I don't think they're like massive like a school like, some other Division I universities that are literal towns.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I mean, I guess it's true. There is a difference, right, between a big school and a big physics program or a big department, for whatever you're trying to study. Um, how big would you say? Like, what's your class sizes?
For us, I think it's like 16, 20.
Okay.
We've had more drop out due to the pressures of COVID, I think. Um, since I've been here, I think we've had, I don't know, four people drop out, and I think that's kind of a rarity. But COVID going on and the other sort of mental stresses that happen with something like this, makes grad school more difficult. I guess I have nothing to compare it to, but that's what people have told me, because I've only experienced graduate school in COVID, so this is all I know.
Yeah. So four people dropped out of your year, like four new students dropped out already?
Yep, first years.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do feel like that's probably largely because of COVID. Obviously, I dropped out in my first year, but I think I was the only one, to my knowledge. In my class was 27 of us. Um, so yeah, that is pretty shocking. Do you feel stressed? Like, do you feel that COVID has affected you during this?
Yeah. Um, I feel like everything takes me longer. I mean, with grad school, one can expect things to take you longer, but like one would hope that they could, study multiple things during a day, like work on, one for one class and then the other class, and make a good significant contribution if you spend 10, 12 hours working on it.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, like I can solely focus on one thing, and like it might take me the whole day to make some progress. And I feel like uh you know at least with the comparison I had with undergrad, because I experienced undergrad without COVID, was like I could do multiple things even when I was taking a boatload of credits and still manage it. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why I feel like that. But I guess the only thing I could say is COVID, because like everything's online. And like I even noticed, like when I TA my students, a lab that takes, I don't know, an hour and a half in person could take 2 hours online. And it's interesting why that happens. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a very fair point. I feel like everything lags a little when you can't be there in person.
Hmm.
Even just communication. Like, you can't just raise your hand, ask a question, and then move on in class. Like, you have to sit there awkwardly clicking on mute your microphone. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's just the small things, they really do add up. Um, do you feel like it's been tough learning, like, virtually when it comes to asking and answering questions? Like, do you feel like you're on your own?
Uh, I don't know. At least with UNH, I feel like there are plenty of resources. Professors have had extended office hours to accommodate for these sorts of things. And mostly because like I feel like a lot of people feel awkward about asking questions in class over Zoom. I don't know if it's because like you have to like physically interrupt class, because obviously the professor, for the most part, if they're writing on the board, can't see you. So you have to just like cut them off mid sentence, or like try
Mm-hmm.
to find a good point. And like, sometimes professors can go on 15, 20-minute tangents and not, have a moment of silence for 15 or 20 minutes. So like you have to like just cut them off. And that feels
Oh my
awkward.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So what was the original question? Sorry, I forgot.
Just if you feel like you are kind of on your own
Oh,
in the learning process
yes,
and
yes.
teaching process
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah. So I don't feel that way personally, but that's just my own experience, because I'm kind of a sociable type of student. I like talking to my professors, even if it's not about class, and
Mm-hmm.
I am very vocal about when I need help. But I don't know how someone who is not very vocal about that and more quiet feels. So I guess that's my take for being a vocal student.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important no matter what the pandemic situation is when you're going to school, like, period. But I can definitely see it being really more of a make or break type of trait, especially like during a pandemic. Like, if you can't ask for help, there's literally no way that anyone's going to see you because you're not there. Like,
Hmm.
nobody's around
Hmm.
to see you struggling unless you say, like, hey, I'm struggling. So that's a really good point. Yeah. Okay, so I guess bringing it back to thinking about like physics programs and graduate programs and stuff. If somebody listening to this was an undergraduate like you were a couple of years ago, thinking about going into a physics program, what's one thing, like it doesn't have to be about any specific topic, but just one thing that comes to mind that you would want to say to them as a piece of advice?
So have they been accepted yet, or are they applying?
Just thinking about going, I
Just
would
thinking
say.
about going. Okay, if you're thinking about going
Mm-hmm.
and you want to do a doctorate in physics in particular, no, it's going to be hard. And what I mean by that is like hard to get in. Like this stuff is a crapshoot.
Right,
Uh,
okay.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
for those out there who obviously don't know my story, the first time I applied, I was rejected by every physics grad school I applied to, all of them. So, it. it's hard. And, I had at least I felt like I was a pretty strong student. I did an REU. I did what I was told, and things still didn't pan out. So this stuff is more or less a crapshoot. So be aware, and hopefully you don't try to evaluate your self-worth on whether you get in or not, because I fell down a really dark hole when that happened, and like I hated the world, and like I don't want other people to do that. And like it's a very lonely feeling if
Yeah.
like you see all your friends succeed and you're not, or move on rather, and you're not, right? You're forced to hang back a year. However, in the same breath, don't sit there and dwell on it either. Like, yeah, it's going to be on your mind, but like if there's one thing I learned through my failures, it's meet that failure with more hard work, more studying, asking more questions, keeping the like just because you graduate, you can still talk to your professors, okay? Like you can email them your questions and they're going to answer you. At least mine did. And like I hope yours care enough about you to do so as well. If
Aw.
not, find somebody like that. Even if you know somebody who went on the physics grad school, ask them your questions and see what they say. Um, like just keep driving the point home and find ways to increase your odds. Like call the admissions office. I don't care.
Mhm.
Like work tirelessly to ensure that if you're really serious about it and you apply again, that like you stand a better chance, and see what happens after that. But in some sense, some of these decisions, as I said, or all these decisions are just a big crapshoot. Like someone could look qualified and they'll reject them for who knows what reason.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very true because you never know who you're up against, so to speak. I mean, and this is kind of where it gets dicey because obviously, like, okay, you were a good student. We went to the same school. I witnessed it. Like, you were a good student. All our professors would have said so too. I feel like obviously you're here now as a graduate student, so you're as good as any of them. But just didn't work out the first time around. And like you say, it's not always a reflection of you when your plans like fall apart. But I guess that kind of just what you're saying makes me think, do you feel like I'll ask this because this is how I feel. Would you agree that maybe succeeding in graduate programs and even maybe just your pursuits in general is more dependent on how you can present yourself and how determined you appear, and also who you're willing to speak to, and just more like social aspects, rather than like making yourself look good on paper?
Yeah, I totally agree with that actually. Networking is more pivotal than like so many other things. Um, it's like you might have heard some old person in your family, your grandpa, your uncle, or whatever, say like it's not about like what you know, it's about who you know. And in some sense, that's true. Like you do have to talk to the right people, and you have to come off like ungodly determined to do something. Like that's what people admire and love. Like colleges seem to just drool over that for whatever reason. The more determined you appear
Mm-hmm.
in your personal statements, at least for physics grad school or grad school in general, I think you might stand a better chance. And then like proving that like your determination can result in something significant, um, is key. Along with making sure that like you're trying to get into research if you want to do a PhD, and making sure that like you're at least showing improvement in your classes, even if you're not getting like straight A's all the time. Like if you went, you started out with like C's and like you eventually have moved up to like a B+ student. I think that shows significant promise in somebody who's like bound determined to do better, because I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
schools want in the end. I mean, now with the elimination of standardized tests, these sorts of things are going to become more and more important, because now they can't compare you based on a score now.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. So, okay, I've been out of the loop for obviously about a year. Um, have they really gotten rid of all the standardized tests?
Like it definitely seems to be phased out. I don't know if they're like completely eradicated. I don't know anything about UNH's right now. At least when I applied,
Okay.
it was strongly recommended.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
like
Okay.
I think like the normal GRE was required, but the subject test was strongly recommended.
Okay.
Even though I feel like you shouldn't have to take the normal GRE, you should just have to take the subject GRE because like that's what your subject's on, and like if they want a standardized test, take that one.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I
But
think they
obviously,
were
I'm not a big proponent of those things, anyways.
right. Yeah, no, neither am I. I do think that finding black and white ways to compare yourself is something that is never really going to be beneficial, and it is kind of a very odd, although it's easy for admissions, I think it's an odd way to compare other people too. Um, and I guess on the topic of comparing on black and white, like figures or like on paper comparing people, do you find that, because I find maybe in academia that people have different motivations, right? So, like, let's say this. What would you say is your motivation for being in a physics PhD program, and what do you think most other people's motivation is for being in a physics PhD program?
Okay, so I'll start with mine. As a result of a recent existential crisis that I had,
Hmm.
for me, it's the motivation for me is the fact that I know what it's like to lose it. Like, I was rejected the opportunity to do this a year prior, and like, I know no matter what I say, it's still going to hurt for all of you out there if you get rejected, or by every grad school in particular. Like, facing one rejection and getting an acceptance, the acceptance kind of like mends the rejection of another school. Like, you're like, oh, screw that school, like they suck. But like if you get rejected by all of them, like you don't get that gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for me, it's the fact that I now have the opportunity to study something that I find really exciting for 5 to 7 years that I may never get to study again, ever. And like that to me is the motivation behind everything I do now. At least for the physics PhD, not, other things in life.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, their motivation, I think, man, I feel bad about saying it because like I don't know people's mind, but this is the vibe I get. And like what I see in others' actions is like they're just doing it for the title.
Yeah.
To say like, yeah, I have a PhD in physics and like I'm entitled to this big time job and I'm gonna make a lot of money and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Like, and like if they're in it for the title, it's like, do you even love physics?
Yeah.
No, you don't. Like you're just in it because everyone looks at a physicist like they're a fucking genius. Sorry for my language for those who might not like that. You can cut that out if you want.
Maybe I can find a bleep noise.
Yeah, beep. Everyone thinks that they're a genius, and it's I don't know, ridiculous to me. And it's like why are you here? Like you just irritate me by your existence for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't. So my question to you, for having somebody who's been through a semester of grad school,
Uh-huh.
what was, I guess, before you ran into the problems that you did, what was your motivation, and what do you think others' motivations are?
You're interviewing me now?
Yeah. This is a double interview
Okay,
now.
let me think about this. Okay. Okay. My motivation. During undergrad at Oneonta, obviously I met so many amazing people. Like I cannot tell you. Almost all of the friends that I have that I really feel like I resonate like they resonate with me, and we have like this really good friendship, and we understand each other, and we have similar personalities and goals. Met them all through physics, almost every single one. Um I just feel like I literally studied abroad. I moved to 4 different places, like all in the name of studying physics. And it's such a cool subject. It explains everything, literally. And I just was so in love with being able to study something that was so universal that I could decide to go anywhere and do almost anything and it would still relate to physics. It was such a bigger picture for me, I think. And the idea that I could continue my education, which obviously I still want to do and I'm going to do in the fall. Just that idea that I could get paid to keep doing something so amazing, on a higher level, and to also then be able to learn how to teach people, and just more and more stuff was going to be incorporated through this graduate program. I loved the idea of that. Just to keep going and, keep climbing and keep learning and keep traveling, and keep meeting people who were like me. And I think that was my biggest strength and also in the end my downfall, because I had such a wonderful picture of community and shared passion and similar mindsets that when I got to UNC, that was not there for a second in anybody. And everything just came crashing down around me because that was all I was in it for. Like, I can do physics, but I don't love the science of physics. I loved, like, the community of physics and everything that physics brought to me. And so once I didn't have that anymore and all I was left with was the equations on the paper, I just couldn't handle it. And that's essentially why I dropped out. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like most other people around me, I think it was like you said. Like, I also hate to say it. And like I said, people that I still love are all studying physics at the moment, pretty much. And I wouldn't say that of them. I wouldn't say they're just in it for the title at all. I think they're inspired and I think they feel a similar way to me. But I do think that at least half of the time, which is a huge percentage, people do just want to prove that they're smart and to be paid to prove that they're smart. And that's also why I couldn't find that community and ended up dropping out too. So is that something that you find and that bothers you?
It does bother me. However, um, I think I had mentioned this when we were talking earlier. Um, I have found comfort in creating my own community
Mm-hmm.
that has, that sort of, connection and, I the people that like I guess I never really know, but like the people who I believe have the right motivations in like my lab group, and then, the people that I study with, like the three other people that I have formed a group with during this time, which is also uh, seemingly more rare. People work a lot more independently now,
Mm-hmm.
now that they're online,
Right.
unless like you've created one, took the initiative to do so. So like I have found content in that I've been able to foster my own community and kind of like you know keep out those who I think have those sorts of bad, I don't want to call them bad, but like those sorts of motives that I strongly disagree with,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with hesitating to call them bad because I also just strongly disagree with them, right? Like, a physics program wasn't designed purely for people like us. And it would be wrong to say like people shouldn't be studying physics for these reasons because we need people studying all sorts of things and whatever. But I think it's just something for people to be aware of. Like, if you're in it to prove that you're smart, know that a lot of people won't be and they won't think very highly of that, and it stops being impressive and it stops being motivational. But if you're in it because you're passionate and your heart is 100% in it, know that not everybody's will be. Like, that's literally the fool mistake that I made, was thinking that everyone's heart was going to be in it when in fact most people's egos were in it. And yeah, so I mean, like, it's for everybody, but you can't assume everyone's going to be like you or feel the same way,
Mhm.
which is kind of what
And
sucks.
I will know, yeah, and I will know if you're not a physics person and you're listening, like you're going to see the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you are truly passionate about your subject matter, you're like, I think this is pretty generalizable.
That's so true.
For those who are like truly passionate about like what they're doing and like what they want to do. I mean, everyone likes to say that they're truly passionate, but it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to show it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which everyone calls enthusiasm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting, actually. So I agree with what you're saying about how this happens everywhere. I think that's totally true, especially in academia, because you can go into an academic area in almost any subject ever. Um, but I guess if we're saying not everybody is passionate or as passionate as they say, what do you think? Like, what does that mean to you? What does it mean for you to be passionate about physics?
It means that you're willing to give hours upon hours, sacrificing weekends, uh, in the name of, you know, doing your research, doing your, um, thank you. Hannah says hi, by the way. For those who are listening, since I am opting not to have this cut out, that is my lovely girlfriend who just brought me my breakfast. I'm gonna keep it in. You gotta keep it human. You gotta keep it human.
You're gonna keep that in?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'll keep it
So
in just for you.
sorry, I lost my train of thought for a moment.
Okay,
This is
okay.
what I get for being distracted. So for me, as I said, it's about sacrificing more. Like it's almost willing to give yourself up for it. And I'm not saying like give it up when your mental health is in the garbage. Like it is important to take days off, and those are key. But it is a very finicky game to learn when to and when not to.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least in grad school, you're going to have higher expectations. People expect you to know things now. Like you're not an idiot now. Like they're not going to treat you like an idiot, and like you better be prepared. And to be passionate about physics, even in undergrad, if you're someone who's an undergrad, you know, while other people are partying every weekend, you're in the lab, or you're in what at Oneana we call the think tank. You're grinding away at the assignments. You're trying to get it done, right? So that you can work on other things. I think that is what defines someone who's passionate, and someone who like also wants to explain physics to others who like want their help. Like if I think if you have any bit of passion for a subject, like you're gonna want to like tell it to others, and like kind of give them your enthusiasm as much as you want to give it to them. And sometimes you're gonna learn that like you can't give them the enthusiasm, you just can't.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just in it to get it over with. But some people, you're gonna give them the love bug, and then they're gonna like think it's like absolutely cool, like whatever you just explained to them.
Oh my god, that's all I want is to just tell people things that I'm passionate about and to see their eyes light up and be like, that's so cool. Isn't that the best?
Yes, yes, it's the literal best thing in the world.
Has that happened to you while you're TAing?
Um, so yeah, it recently has. Mostly with like it was more about like how weird math can be
Mm-hmm.
in some sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Like how like a physicist can use math to model the real world.
Right.
Like to me that blows my mind. Like math under my impersonation, it's a man-made concept that we developed
Mm-hmm.
to understand the world. And then like we just like keep running with it, but like we have people keep coming up to keep expanding on certain things on a certain set of definitions or axioms that we set to keep the rigor. So like you're not making up other things, you just find properties based on some predetermined sets of definitions that you can derive by being crafty and things like that.
Right.
And like I don't know, me and my students were just kind of like sitting back and like, wow, like that is like math, and like how it connects to the real world is just astounding.
Yeah, it is.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, it is. That's cool. It's those little moments that keep you going.
And like they all were like, it's crazy. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And like they're a bunch of engineering majors. Like they don't really care about math that much. They care about the
engineers.
applications. And like when you can like pull the most when you can pull the most extract thing from math, they're like, wow, I thought that had no
Oh
other
my god.
purpose. And like in reality,
Yeah.
it does. It really does.
Yeah.
It's how deep you want to see it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Listen, are we gonna have a bunch of clinking on your end from your bowl of whatever you're eating? Is there gonna be a bunch of clinking noises in the audio?
I don't know.
It's okay.
I hope not.
We'll just apologize.
If it does,
in
let me
advance.
know. Right now, I'm letting it cool down.
What is it?
Yeah, right now I'm just like letting this thing like it's
Oh, they're the
so for
oats?
those out there who can't see it. I mean, Hannah can't really see it either, but yeah, it's like so you got some oats, some Nutella, some peanut butter, all mixed in, and like you kind of like bake it a little bit, and it gets all like a little crispy outside, and you put some fruit in it, and it's like really delicious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact recipe, so I would strongly encourage those to look up baked oats.
Okay, I'm gonna make use of this. We're on the topic of food. Grad school, obviously, is very, very time consuming. I literally would be gone when I was in school from almost 6:30 a.m. to sometimes 9 p.m. teaching my lab. And, like, what the heck do you do to cook for yourself? How, when you're spending this much time on studying, getting around, teaching, like, all this stuff? Like, what's the best tips for people on feeding themselves and being healthy? I feel like that's so important.
You always have the best questions, Hannah, I swear. You got the best questions. That is the $1,000,000 question, my friend. You
Yeah, for
know,
any student, yeah.
I would, yeah, it really is. Most of my friends don't eat that well, and I'm thankful enough that like I don't get a lot of takeout, and like I've found a way to make it work. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of helps that I have a second person, so like we can divvy up the work. So the amount of work that someone would have to do to make a lasagna dish is cut in half because I have Melissa. But not everybody has that luxury, which is, you know, um, so I guess if I was alone, and like there have been some times when I was alone when Melissa's busy and I have to do some things and make dinner for the night. It's all about like in some sense meal prepping a little bit. So like for breakfast, at least today, we were thankful enough to have a wellness day, which is UNH's cheap version of saying here's your spring break that we're not going to give you. So
Mm.
enjoy this day of feeling you're supposed to get outside and not worry about the classes, but
It's snowing.
yeah, not happening today. Yeah, it's snowing and
Oh
it's
my
cold as
gosh.
hell. So you're just gonna sit inside and do your work anyways, and not listen to
Mm-hmm.
UNH. But I understand. Yeah, so meal prepping a little bit. So like overnight oats is like my personal favorite. So what that is
Mm-hmm.
for those who don't know, and what I like to do, you just throw some oats in a jar, put some milk in, let it soak overnight. But while you're doing that, before you let it soak overnight, put some peanut butter and Nutella. So if we keep talking about food, you're gonna notice I eat a lot of peanut butter and Nutella. That stuff is the jam. If you don't like it, I don't know. I don't know, man. You gotta get into it. It's a great stuff. Um, and you put some banana and some fruit in there. Put some granola that like the Quaker Oats granola, really good. Um, and then there's your breakfast made for you that night, and it takes I don't know 15 minutes, and you can make that for like a whole week. But if you get sick of that, then like you can like pick up some bagels. So breakfast is like the easiest thing. Lunch, it's about like quesadillas and wraps for me. I love quesadillas, and they're pretty easy to make. You just
Mm-hmm.
you know make some. If you eat meat, then you can make some meat on the weekend and cook it up and then put it in. But if you don't, it's even easier because you can just cook the veggies with the quesadilla, and voila, all you
Mm-hmm.
gotta do is cut them up and bam, bada bing, bada boom. It's great. Or you make some wraps. Put a little avocado in that. I love avocado, by the way.
Yeah, good
That's one
wrap.
thing grad school has gotten me to like. Avocado is so good, and I wish I had eaten it sooner.
It's really good. It's so good. And it's so easy to mush up and put on your toast for breakfast.
Dinner is the hardest one.
It is, yeah. Dinner's really hard because you're already freaking tired.
Yes.
It's been a long day. Now you gotta turn on the stove.
I know. One thing that helps, maybe try to do a little more oven cooking instead of using the stovetop. That can help. So like you can put something in for like an hour and like forget about it and then come back and then eat it and then do your dishes. Doing dishes is the worst part. So if you have a dishwasher,
Yeah.
please use it. It'll save you a lot of time. All of those seconds are precious.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, I kind of like that because I mean, you can even just sit at your kitchen counter and watch your stuff cook in the oven if you're cooking in the oven. That is something that I didn't do a lot, and I
Mm.
think as a result, because I cook a lot of pasta, and just fried vegetables and stuff in a frying pan, and I really did feel like it was sucking all my time away because you can't leave that unattended. Um, so yeah, that's actually really good advice. I do like that. And overnight things you can just put in the fridge and then magically they turn into your food. Like chia pudding is similar to overnight oats in that you just mix chia seeds with milk and you just put it in a jar, flavor it with whatever you want, and then suddenly it's there. Like the next day, it's ready to be
Boom.
eaten. Yeah, those are really good recipe hacks, I guess.
So before you start your next question,
Uh huh.
I'm going to interview you now
Oh
because
yeah.
what did you do?
What did
What
I
did you
do?
do? Because like we have different diets.
Right.
So like my I mean Melissa is a vegetarian, so like
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. But like what were your sort of meal hacks?
Yeah. Okay. So I had just turned vegan when I started my graduate program. I'd been vegetarian, so it wasn't like a big transition. And I think, to be totally honest, what I did was literally I got a rice cooker. I would say that's what I did for food was I got a rice cooker because then Similar thing, like you can just flick on the switch and turn on the rice cooker for like 15 minutes. And then when it's done, you scoop it out and you have rice. And then literally whatever vegetables I had, or sometimes I would have like frozen things like fake soy chicken that I could fry up that came with a little sauce or something. So anything that I could pair with rice, I paired with rice because it was so easy to cook and it's so filling. So I wouldn't be like hangry the whole day or like crying from depression because I was like really hungry as well. It makes everything overwhelming when you're hungry, you know? And then I also had protein shakes. So I started using protein powder just because I needed to be full. Like you need to have the energy and feed yourself properly or else you'll just die. So those are like the two big things I did to make sure that I wasn't starving while studying.
A rice cooker is such a good idea. I had never thought about that because rice takes so long. Like unless you're like, making some quinoa or something,
Yeah.
because quinoa can be a little quicker. But like rice takes the better part of 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta get one of those now because I love rice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was awesome. It's really, really good. Would recommend. Get a nice rice cooker. They're so cheap. I got mine from Target for, I think, $20 maybe.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, okay, so obviously feeding yourself is really, really key to staying functional as a graduate student. Like, I would watch people around me in my classes get a mug from the staff room and fill it with boiling water and pour one of those tiny ass packets of like oats, you know what I mean? Like the quick 1 minute like microwave oats out into the mug, and it would like half fill the mug, and they'd eat this like soggy little like fake instant oatmeal, and that would be their entire breakfast like during class. And I was like, please, feed yourself. I don't want to see you collapse.
Yeah, seriously.
And so so on top of eating properly, what else is like a key survival thing for graduate students that like you should not skip out on or skimp out on or anything?
All right, so for those, I'm gonna like try to keep this kind of universal because I like to work out, even though I have found times when like working out was like extremely inconvenient, and like I had to skip out on it so that I could do other things, which sucked. But even if you don't work out, I think it is important to, one, take time at the end of each day to unwind. Like, seriously. Like, otherwise you're gonna, like, get, like, super stressed and you're not gonna sleep well because, like, your mind is still gonna be, like, thinking about whatever you were just doing that's, like, stressing you out. Okay, two, find time to, like, watch a show. Like, if I don't have a show, I like watching YouTube videos. Like, I don't know, like when I'm eating dinner or something to, like, distract my mind a little bit from, like, the harsh reality that can be physics grad school or grad school in general. Like right now, I'm watching Attack on Titan. By the way, great show. Really intense.
Yeah, it is.
But I like it. But like watching a show, like I just finished Stranger Things and like I watched it during dinner and it helped me get my mind out of things. Like just from like not thinking about like the real world and like just like getting into a show or like watching Harry Potter movies, as you know I just finished.
Oh yeah.
So like those sorts of things. Find time for yourself a little bit, even if it's like while you're eating dinner. Like don't let your meals just be like, oh, this is something I got to do to like live. Like make it like a little bit of an unwinding practice. I think that can really help.
Yeah.
At least it helped me a lot.
No, I love that. It's like make it about you. Things that you aren't obligated to do for school, or even things that you are obligated to do for school. If you can turn it, like twist it somehow into being almost like personal time or motivational time or relaxing time, that's always something that you should do, I think. Because it is really stressful to constantly be on the go like that.
Oh, and also go for walks.
Yeah.
Go for walks. Seriously. Like, I don't know, you've been working for a couple hours and you're just stuck and like you like find yourself constantly peering at your phone. Go for like a 15, 20-minute walk. It helps, especially when it's nice out. When it's cold, it kind of sucks. But like, if you go to grad school in the Northeast, then like, you might have to brave the cold a little bit.
Yeah.
Which sucks. And, don't get me wrong, I don't like it either. But I'm here. So, you got to put up with it.
Yeah.
But go for a walk because sitting kills. So,
sitting kills.
Because you'll find yourself sitting a lot in grad school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a good point. I think just going outside too can't be understated. Like even if you have zero motivation to physically move yourself. Just drag yourself to the nearest door and step outside of it, especially when it's sunny, right? Like, because my office, I don't know about yours, mine was in like a basement, and there were windows. Yeah, there were windows, but like,
What?
it wasn't, it was a basement depending on where you approached it from, sort of. It's complicated. It was pretty dark, pretty gloomy, and just going out into the sunlight, I felt like was a huge thing. Like, I literally, when I got overwhelmed, I would feel myself feeling like I was going to start to cry, and then I would go outside, and then my whole mood would change, because I would be like, maybe I'd still cry a little bit, but, I'd be like, oh my god, the world still exists, it's going to be fine. I don't know. But I think, obviously, walking can do the same thing for you, plus gives you a little bit of exercise, too, so.
Yeah, especially like in a pandemic when like
Yeah.
you're always in your house. So like even just being in your house can be a little annoying.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of, I guess, being in the pandemic, I was going to say that, there are certain social activities maybe you could find on your campus to distract you from the struggles of being a graduate student, but you must not have really had that. So what do you think, what advice would you give someone who was concerned about the social aspect of graduate school?
Yeah. So, all right. So here I might sound like a complete introvert. So usually, and I think you have experienced this as well, graduate students make a group chat with all the first years.
Mm-hmm.
I did not partake in that, partly because I had the hindsight of your experience, Hannah.
Oh, really?
Partly, and like also like I'm just not a big fan of group chats.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, at least from what I can tell from the students that I do collaborate with, who are my friends, it just seems like a big thing where people complain. So that has eliminated a lot of the social aspect. But luckily, I live with two other people who make me laugh, and they're my social aspect as long, and also with the people I collaborate. So in the pandemic, the thing that has gotten me by with social activity was one, talking to my professors, like going to their office hours. Like if you go to office hours, it doesn't have to be about homework. You can ask like how they're doing, and like when they ask how you're doing, you can talk about it a little bit. They're always willing to help you, like especially if you got that community. If the professor doesn't care, then like that's a different story. Then like you know find a professor that you can like, even if it's like your advisor. Hopefully your advisor is that type of person, but I know some people aren't so lucky in that.
Mm-hmm.
They get an advisor who's like kind of a jerk. um so, socializing with the people you live with, because, there could be a chance that you live with other first years potentially, or just some other rando. And, like, it's also good to have friends outside of your department. That is also pivotal because when you're constantly surrounded by it, it can drive you a little bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I was saying, I found community in my friends that I collaborate with, because I took the initiative to ask them if they wanted to study, and like turns out they wanted to study in person too. So like we have a group of four of us, myself and three others, where like we don't just talk about physics when we meet. We talk about how are things going, and like
Mm-hmm.
do we want to maybe get a couple beverages and sit and drink a little bit,
Yeah.
just to talk about life. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think being a new graduate student, it's still hard to know how to socialize. Like, what is the best thing to do? I think that's part of what really overwhelmed me as well. Because did you get the sense, like, when you started in your program, did you have a mindset of, like, the people that I study with in my classes who are going through this program with me, like, we're in it for 5 years or more together, we should be friends or friendly? Or did you just not care who you were around? Like, what were you expecting socially, and what did you get socially from your classmates?
That's a interesting question. So I didn't go in with any expectations, mostly because like I knew I was going into a pandemic. But if we were in an ideal world and things were going to be normal, I would expect it for us to be a little closer overall as a class, because in grad school all the first years take the same classes usually, outside of like someone might be taking a different elective or something if they so choose. Um, But usually for the first semester, everybody is taking the same classes. So like you're all kind of running on the same schedule. Um, I guess one would expect you guys to become more friendly with each other and like creating kind of like a group mentality. But um, as I said, because of COVID, I wasn't really expecting anything. Um, and as I have seen in COVID, most people prefer to be online, even though they are 5 minutes down the road and could easily come to class. Especially when you're tested regularly. Like I get the fear of COVID, um, but now with the vaccines coming out and like people are always like, oh, I wish I could come to class, but like in some sense I don't get it because like you have to go shopping and like I think that's far more risky than going to class where you're 6 feet apart from everybody wearing a mask, and the professor's wearing a face shield too. So like
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the risk coming into class, especially when like it's around a bunch of people you know are tested all the time. So I don't know. But what I got was like this weird like we're all on our own sort of deal, and like
Mm-hmm.
we hate everything. Like the professors are so hard in this, that, and the other. At least from what I can tell, because I'm not in the group chat, so I don't know what everybody thinks. So like I'm like the lone wolf here, and I'm glad I'm not. I'm glad I am because those group chats, as I'm sure you can attest, Hannah, is like they're toxic, man. Like everyone just wants to complain. At least in our two experiences, that's what we can speak to. Like everyone wants to complain about how hard their classes are, and like this sucks. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like come on, man.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? Like you're not building community.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think so. Okay, obviously we've been going for like quite a while at this point. I think the last thing that I really feel like this is actually a perfect segue. What you were saying, wanted to address was like, what do you feel is I don't want to say what's the role of complaining in grad school, but more like what's the reality of complaining, because I faced so much complaining. Not on my own, like I tried my best to not complain, but everywhere I turned, complaints, 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 complaints. It was really demoralizing and really irritating. And I guess I just want to know, do you find that's the case? Do you find people complaining a lot? Do you think it's socially encouraged to complain? Like, what are your feelings? How does that affect you?
I don't know if it's socially encouraged, but I do know people love to complain. I find myself liking to complain sometimes, but it's not so outward where everybody hears me.
Mm-hmm.
I just, might complain to myself. But when it comes to physics grad school, I don't complain about anything, but I feel like everybody else does. And like this kind of thing, like I don't see any benefit in it. Like I don't see how it helps anybody at all. As you were saying, it's demoralizing. It's it's like why complain? You're here because you're supposed to love physics. So like
Mm-hmm.
why are you complaining?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no reason to complain. Like you came to grad school knowing damn well, at least I hope, that like it's going to be hard and like you're expected to know things. So like you're gonna be like really pushed. Like that is their goal to turn you into, a professional physicist. Like you came in like knowing nothing. As much as you like to think that you knew something, you don't. Like you really don't.
Right.
Like like this tiny tiny fraction, and like you think it's like the whole world,
Yeah.
and like physics is so much deeper, and like what even if you're not in physics, the field you have come to know is so much deeper than like you really think it is,
Mm-hmm.
and there is no benefit to complaining. I think it's pointless.
Yeah. I agree. It's very, very, very pointless. I felt like it was almost encouraged in the social circle that I was in, or like in my first year class, because it would be a relatable topic that everybody could chime in on. Like somebody in a chat or in person when the professor wasn't in class would be like, I can't believe that we have another problem set already. What is she thinking? She's a horrible teacher. Did you see the way she answered that question? Why didn't she do this? Why doesn't she do that? And actually, interestingly, most of the time it was directed at the female professors, but I guess that's a whole different segue. And it just felt very like as soon as one person had a complaint, everyone else just piled it on because they were like, oh, here's what we're all going to relate over.
Hmm.
And I feel like that spiraled it into a very, very toxic place because the way you relate to other people around you is the reality that you paint, basically.
Hmm.
you know, like if you spend your whole day making friends over the idea of hating parts of your graduate program, you're going to hate your graduate program.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just no other way to say it. And I think something I should make clear too is when I say complain, and I'm sure this is what you were meaning too, I don't mean that you can't be struggling with your mental health and say to somebody, I'm having a really bad day. I can't keep up with these problem sets. Like, this is a lot. I feel like I've been TAing nonstop. I mean, like, I can't believe that we have 3 problem sets to do in 2 weeks for 3 different classes. Like, why wouldn't they, like, spread it out for us? Or, like, wow, this is so much work. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Things that are just general, overarching complaints, things that are directed, like, at a professor, or, you know, it's not about how you're feeling. It's about, like, voicing frustration and making something the target of it, if that makes sense. Because there is a difference, right?
Yeah. Oh, of
Like
course.
you're allowed to be struggling, and you can have negative conversations, but they don't have to mean that you're viewing everything in a negative light.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's just a difference that I would emphasize, because I don't want to make it seem like I would shame a graduate student for not being super positive all the time, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not, I mean, I don't think that's realistic. Do you?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's realistic either. But it is to know, it's noteworthy to know that, like, you're like, know when you're complaining for the sake of complaining, and know when you're complaining for the sake of yourself. Like, those are very key differences. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to cap off the, you know, bad complaints section, we literally had a section of students in our program complain about the comprehensive exam, which is the exam we take when we enter, that you get several chances to pass, was hard because it was comprehensive. It's in the name.
Oh my god, I'm weak.
Like, it's a long standing thing. Like, okay, so for those who do go into physics programs, you're probably going to have to take 1 or 2 sets of exams. One of them being called, they might call them a comprehensive exam, which is basically the long answer version to the physics GRE. So now it's not, you know, multiple choice. It's like you've got to solve a problem, and you got to do it on each major subject area. So, you know, quantum, classical, E&M, thermo, and modern physics. And then, you know, at the end of your graduate school classes, you'll have to take, you know, what some schools call the qualitative exam. So, like, it's the same thing, just now with all your grad school stuff. So, like, I think that that's a pretty worthless complaint, because yes, it's in the name. It's comprehensive. So yes, it's going to be hard, and that's what makes it hard. You can't just be given the equations.
Yeah. I mean, you genuinely cannot sign up for a graduate program and then sit there and complain about having work to do.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And having exams to take. Like, you just can't do it. Please don't do it. Spare us all. Keep a smile on your face as much as possible. Like, don't get sucked into the culture of complaining and stuff.
And if you do see people complaining for the sake of complaining, always about the professor, and the professor's never right, you know, don't keep them in your circle.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
red
you're not gonna
flag.
win. Like,
Yeah.
big red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't try to, like, change their mind. Like, if you think you're able to, go ahead, be my guest. But, like, I don't think people like that are willing to change their minds.
Yeah, you don't need that extra challenge when you're trying to deal with grad school.
Exactly.
Okay, is there anything you want to say to cap it off? Any burning messages about graduate school, or tales of your own adventures that people could learn from, or anything? Or do you think you're all good?
Okay, I got one last thing,
Okay.
and I'll try to make it as brief as I can.
All right, hit me with it.
Having, you know, coming onto the home stretch of my first year of grad school, it has been a whirlwind. And I'm sure, you know, many of you who are listening and are planning to go or are in grad school, um, you're gonna feel the same way. It is crazy. To steal a quote from someone that you and I know and love, i.e., Dad. Um, you know who I'm talking about, Hannah. Um,
Oh my
you
god.
know, take the time to enjoy your work. Take the time to enjoy it, because it really is
Yeah.
enjoyable when you think about it. And if, like, you're in it for those sorts of reasons, you're actually going to enjoy some problems, and, like, really enjoy them, and, like, immerse yourself in the subject area, and also know when to step out and give yourself that mental break and for your mental health. that is my big overarching messaging of grad school.
I like that. I like that a lot because that's so true. I think that's all it boils down to. I never even really thought about it so black and white, but like, if it's what you enjoy studying, you will enjoy grad school, period. And for me, that wasn't true, and I dropped out, and I would tell anybody to drop out, like, no question. Not if they enjoyed it, but anybody who's thinking, like, do I really belong here? Like, do I really like this? If you're spending your whole time questioning whether or not you like it, like, I hate to break it to you, but you probably don't. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice.
For all of you out there.
Well,
these are just my 2 cents, so your mileage may vary.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing your infinite wisdom that you've accumulated over the past year. I appreciate it.
I wouldn't call it infinite. It's countable.
Your finite wisdom that you've gained this year.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting it out here for all of us.
Of course, thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking with you, as always.
Yeah, so. It was really fun. We'll do this again, maybe, I don't know, next semester, next year or something.
Yeah, maybe like in the fall.
All right.
You know, we could do an update on your summer leading up to re-entering university.
Very true.
And then mine is immersing myself in graduate school research.
Oh, good idea. Okay, you heard it here first, folks. Thank you for joining us. Coming in the fall. Stay tuned.
Part 2.